Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. My name's Neil McCara. I'm chair of the Chamber, Southland Business Chamber, and also co-chair with Amy Coe of Just Transition Southland. But I'm not here in that capacity today. I'm here to talk about my personal views around leadership and regional leadership, here with Tom Campbell as well to talk through that. If I reflect on yesterday in terms of some of the key themes that come out of that and what does that mean from a leadership perspective, you can talk about long-term intergenerational need for planning. We've got some great assets down in Southland and we need to make sure we've got this long, robust plan. The need for alignment across organisations, a great couple of days. We have some other wonderful organisations across the region, including likes of Great South, the Merrill Forum, the EOG, etc. But we'd probably need to be working together closer and getting better alignment into the future. I think the last couple of years in terms of journey for me has seen this willingness to keep evolving and developing, but I think there's more to do, and as the phrase goes, we should be doing more. I'm going to pass you to Tom to talk a bit about the why, and then I'll come back and wrap up at the end. So over to you, Tom.
Thanks very much, Neil. Good morning, everybody. I got to say, look, I'm going to talk about the context as I see it behind the need for real leadership, enduring, long-term leadership of major projects. That's the main theme of this talk. To start, though, I just want to observe it's fantastic to see the number of people who've attended this conference. You know, when the last Southland Regional Development Strategy was launched 7 years ago, there were 400 people attended that launch in the Transport Museum. 400. And I remember one of the ministers who attended made a comment to me that that was twice as many as had attended any other strategy launch anywhere in the country. So we've got Southland have got a deserved reputation for being prepared to work together to achieve strategic outcomes. And that is certainly very, very necessary, I think, when we think about some of the projects that are, ahead of us on the horizon. So if I can stick with the swords theme just for a second. In 2015, the Merrill Forum launched the Swords Initiative at a firm 10-year time horizon. And there was two reasons for that. Firstly, because the mayors were concerned that it would get into too much blue sky thinking, and they wanted practical proposals. So by limiting it to 10 years, they thought it was less likely that we'd be, talking about settling Mars or anything. And the second reason for it was because Swords was intended as an input to the long-term plan. The 10-year long-term plan, the territorial authorities, have to do. And for that reason, some of the opportunities which had been discussed yesterday and are going to be discussed again today were not part of that sort of strategy. They were recognised, but were not part of it because it could be seen that they were over that 10-year horizon into the future. But it's not only territorial authorities that are captured by that, medium-term, 10-year thinking. So too are investors and shareholders and boards of directors. And even large companies, even the largest companies, can sometimes balk at proposals that have 10, 15, 20 years to final investment decisions. If a business development professional stands up and talks about a project that will reach FID in 10 or 15 years, pretty soon find that the director's eyes are glazing over. And even chief executives who, around the world, have got an average of about 4 years tenure in the role, tend to be uninterested in projects which won't get underway until long after they're gone. For that reason, business development professionals, and I used to be one, business development professionals often oversell projects to councils, to the public, even to their own boards, particularly in terms of timelines, which of course only then increases the frustration and impatience as years pass and the projects don't actually get built up to that point. Some projects are strategically inevitable. It's a matter of when they get done rather than whether. And the question for a region like Southland is, how do you maintain confidence and constancy of purpose and faith in a project, even as the years pass, even sometimes as decades pass? And the original project promoters, both in terms of the commercial company and in terms of our own internal people, fall away and need to be replaced. When I look at some of the opportunities which were discussed yesterday and which are going to be discussed again today, they definitely fall into that category of strategically inevitable. It's not a matter of whether, it's a matter of when. But timing may be potentially longer than we think. It might even be intergenerational rather than something that's measured in a few years. If I can take a little detour, with apologies to Chris, and I hope I'm not eating his lunch by telling the same story, by telling a little TY story that I think is relevant to this. So the smelter was first proposed in 1908. The combination of hydrogeneration at Manapuri and an aluminium smelter to make the project financeable was suggested back then, 1908, but was not built until 1970 and only reached full capacity in 1994, the completion of Potline 4. There were multiple efforts to get it started before then, especially in the 1920s and the 1930s and the 1950s. Each time it failed because the project champion moved on. When it was finally built, and this is I think the best part of the story, when it was finally built, it was the result of a chance encounter between the then Minister for Energy for New Zealand and the Managing Director of Comalco at the Melbourne Cup. And they found mutual interest in horses, and they found, as they talked about things, somehow or other they get around to that possibility of Manapuri and, and TY. So it was by pure happen chance, 65 or something like that, years later. My own belief is that a strong regional development entity able to sustain momentum and interest in that Manapuri TY project could have seen it built at least 30 years earlier. But even that would have been 30 years after it was first proposed because of technology limitations. I think it would have taken at least that long, but it would have been, probably in the 1930s the project could have got up if there had been a promoter who was, had constancy of purpose and who was enduring and who could have, sold that project internationally, but based in Southland. So I think that the question posed by this session is, how do we ensure that there is leadership of regional development in Southland which is enduring and able to speak with a single voice? They might argue like cats in a sack behind the scenes, but when they emerge to, talk to the world, they speak with a single voice, which is financed on a strategic basis rather than annual results. So in other words, that entity has confidence for years into the future that it's going to be able to fund its work, and which has a constancy of purpose to pull projects through, even if the timescale is longer. Even if, I think, best case scenario at TY, even if it had been a generation in the making, it still might have been done 30 years earlier than it actually was. I think another question for us, particularly those of us here from councils, is how do we make sure that regional leadership ensures that our part of the bargain, our part of that commercial bargain, is fulfilled. Essentially, that there's infrastructure, there's housing, there's an educated workforce, and that we are getting on with adaptation to climate change, which provides the necessary protection that they can feel confident about coming in and developing a maybe multi-billion-dollar project in this region. So anyway, so that's the context as I see it. We must have that regional leadership, and it must be enduring, and we must support it through bad times and good. And then there is nothing, I think, in any of the projects which are being proposed at the moment, there is nothing which will not happen. They will happen, even if it takes 10, 15, 20 or longer years. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you, Tom. There's no such thing as a free breakfast, but I sit back and reflect on yesterday, and we talked about 2% of the population being challenging, but for me, I think it's a significant opportunity. We're well known for getting on and doing things and working well together. I think the next evolution for us is going, what do we need to do around this leadership piece? And those that can embrace technology can jump on their phone and feed this back into the website, or you can write it down on a note. But I'm going to take 5 minutes from the floor and your tables and ask you one question is basically, what one thing would we do differently around regional leadership into the future and action that tomorrow? So I just want to take 5 minutes and get some floor interaction, get your brain switched on so it's not all about us. So I'll pause for a minute. Can you write it down, scribble it on the feedback? The website is available. Someone used it last night, and then I'll wrap up after that. Thank you. Over, but they're behind, so I'm going to grab 2 tables and ask a comment.
I know the Grant Robertson came yesterday. No, I never. So who was here? Megan.
Just Megan. She was here for an hour or two and she's in the housing project and out again.
According to the paper, she got into TY a little bit. Was she?
It's a mixed bag. One instance, talking about decarbonisation. That's always the mantra of it. And
Yeah, you wonder sometimes. You wonder some. Well, exactly. You wonder sometimes whether they just pick up the speech that they gave last year. You know, nothing was on there.
Yep.
That's a good crowd, actually. It must be 150 or something.
200 invites, yeah.
There were more people yesterday, was there?
I don't think this wasn't significantly more. A few more. Comes and goes from day to end of the session, doesn't it? Maybe we'll come to some of the other.
I always find that these one of the disciplining things that you find is that often ministers come and they say that and they go away. So they don't actually hear anything that's being said. They hear themselves and they listen to their voice. And then and then they go away and they go and do visits or whatever and they miss you.
Yeah.
So we get questions by
I'm going to ask 2 tables what their opinion is.
And those that have written anything down, I'll get to help and we will go around and get
Thank you all. I'm going to pose 2 tables just to share their thoughts. I always love covering on Prue. So, Prue, what was your table's thoughts around? We've got some. Look at the mic, sorry, team. Is there a mic? Roving mic. I don't. Prue, speak up. Thank you. Sorry. Back into order. Thank you. Prue, what were your table's thoughts?
Table. Thank you. And agree up front the terms of reference and how everybody's going to operate, but that it can't just be driven by one particular group in the region. We do believe that there's a lot of joint regional work. I'll come back to that, Jackie, with your community, but that we think that it needs to be driven not by council. Apologies if that's going to offend anybody in council, but we think that the efforts that have worked really well for our region around swords and some of the work streams that are happening through Beyond 25 and through Just Transitions are the ones where we've really put aside the hats that we're all wearing, and we actually get together to talk about the things that matter for the region, and also coming back to the funding models that we use to around regional leadership and around our EDA in particular. We don't think that they're sufficient to provide us with the regional leadership we need, because it comes down to making sure that everybody's got enough money to do particular things, but the more comprehensive overviews not being put through. We talked about also the fact that we've lost a little bit of that community collaboration around regional development as well. So the community element of what used to happen through Venture Southland now goes back to individual groups, and that's a lost opportunity. And essentially making sure that that broad range of voices has very strong leadership at the top, so that you have, whether it's an independent chair or somebody who can make sure that everybody's coming without the hats that we all like to wear.
Thank you, Prue. I love how you followed my instructions about one thing, but that's fine. Happy to take some questions from the floor and views. Any? Yep.
I might be a wee bit more direct, actually. I think I would urge to get a deal done on TY as quickly as possible. And the reason I say that is not to push it to a point of making the wrong choice, but the longer the choice is out there, the more uncertainty it creates for the country, for, I guess, the parties in question. And all this good intention is like a hope until that's done. So I would just urge parties to get together and get a deal done, one way or the other. Then the certainty will drive a lot of the innovation and the opportunity in the future. That's what I would say.
Thank you, completely agree. Yep. Any other questions from the floor, or thoughts, reflections? Nobody's always got a comment.
Thank you for that, Neil. I think we lack leadership. I think you've already alluded to that. My view is that we should have a Southland Inc. that goes away from traditional boundaries. The sort of people that would be, or the groups that would be on Southland Inc. would be Chamber of Commerce, councils, the funding trusts that we've got, the two big funding trusts, some developers like the Richardsons and the Thompsons and the Thompsons. You get a lot done in our city. Government should be limited to Kanoa, which is just economic development only. SIT, obviously, for workforce development. Our local MP should be there. And last but not least, Murahiki Regen. You put all those pieces of the puzzle together, we'll have a strong focus going forward. At the moment, we're fractured. We sit in little wee pods, little wee silos of our own. Some of those stakeholders are not in with other stakeholders. So I'd be a strong supporter of that Southland Inc.
Thank you. In the front here.
Just a very quick point from the three of us here, and it was touched on by both Nobby and also the first person who spoke. From a complete layman's perspective, I think Southland needs an independent commissioner or a something to bring you all together and bang your heads together. An independent person. There is patch protection down here, and it's inevitable, because where's the money coming from? And it's all tied into that resource. So you get an independent person, forms your Southland Inc., Nobby's right, whoever wants to be there is fine, but if you have that bigger group, they're never going to make a decision. And you've got to empower a commissioner to consult and get shit done.
Thank you.
Kia ora koutou, Kavi Singh from PowerNet. We had the discussion on our table around what is the one thing that could help things, speed things up, and we all sort of pointed to the consenting process. I know this has been said before, it's not new, but we've experienced this ourselves. Normally in a large commercial company where you have a strategy and projects are measured against that strategy, where the projects meet the criteria, they go ahead and they are normally accelerated, others require a stronger business case. So as a region, that's what we need. I think we need a clear strategy, criteria, where projects meet those criteria, they should be accelerated, and others not. So something as simple as that works for big corporates, and maybe it's not as simple as that for a whole region, but in principle it is. So I'd challenge whoever thinks that couldn't work here. But that's
Cool.
that's
Thank
what we
you.
think. Cheers.
I think we're running on time, so we'll call it quits there. But I think there is a project on the way around what we call Southland Inc., or the future of the regional leadership. So if you're keen to get involved, keen to hear from you, and we'll continue to develop what that looks like in the future. I think it is a key part of ensuring we've got a clear plan, we've got those priorities, and as you say, we put the focus on the things that are going to make the big difference. So we need to work together. Thank you.